It's sometimes the case with writers of television drama that their own stories are as interesting as what they put on the screen. What television has done in this country is give a voice to working class, lower middle class writers, which they find a little bit in literature, novels and poetry, but those are becoming more and more the preserve of the bulging, growing, engrossing middle classes, really. The working class people with talent are much more encouraged by and much more influenced by and give much more to, in my view, television. And it's curious that they can do a television drama which gets between 5 and 10 million, and their friends can write a novel which gets 200,000 or 300,000 readers, and the novel will be reviewed extensively and intensively, and the television play might get a paragraph here, a paragraph there, and that's it. It's a curious hierarchy that we still have. And Kay Mellor is one of those people who's broken through in television in a way it would have seemed impossible for her to break through in other ways. Her parents divorced when she was 4. She was brought up by her Jewish mother. She married her first boyfriend when she was pregnant at 16. They're still married. Then she went to Breton College up near Leeds, up in Wakefield near Leeds, and studied literature and drama and took her life into her own hands and went on Coronation Street, that great apprentice shop for writers in the North, and then went on to write Band of Gold, adapt Jane Eyre, and on she goes. And she does it with that unflinching gaze that can come from people who've had to do everything for themselves. And she became a remarkable chronicler of what has been called an underclass or a neglected class, as well as being well able to take on classics and turn her hand to those. So we were very, very pleased to do the programme with her.
This is aged about 8, I think, and maybe younger, about 7.
The biggest influence, I suppose, was my mum. It wasn't a literary household at all, really, although my mum used to tell me lots of stories.
She used to say, "Tell me a story, Mum," and I used to say, "No, I'll read you one today, I can't concentrate." She used to say, "No, that one with that thing, but that boy in the woods," and I knew then what she meant. She wanted me to make one up out of my head. And I used to give her a penny and send her up to the shops, more or less, to get rid of her. And I had an understanding with the man in the shop. I used to say...
Dillon's, was it?
Yeah. Just give her a pennyworth of anything.
Pennyworth of anything.
Send her back down.
Yeah, it's a good title for a play, that.
Yeah,
A pennyworth of anything, isn't it? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I was largely brought up by my mother because my parents divorced when I was about 3 or 4.
Do you think that had an effect on you and your writing later on?
I think occasionally it kind of flicks through, particularly where there's kind of, I don't know, where the violence is concerned, I suppose. And I think it's probably to do with the fact that the breakup, you know, it was a difficult situation that my mum was in.
Was there violence inside your family then?
I think there probably was, yes. And I got to know my father much later on, actually, when I was 21 plus. And I think he felt kind of quite isolated because he'd been put in an orphanage over here because he was from Irish background. So I think he felt kind of alien in this kind of strong, sort of Jewish world.
I wasn't very happy then. I took ill at this time.
And I think there was a lot of pressure for Jewish girls to marry Jewish boys.
My mother stayed with us. She did all the washing, made sure Donald had his dinner. It was very good of her because, well, she never really took to Donald. Said he had close set eyes. Said she didn't like his accent. Said he had a greedy streak. She was right.
Is she a bit like a woman and a passionate woman?
My mum? She's a bit like Betty. Yeah, she's like a bit like... Oh, Betty, I mean, that's how we meet Betty. Son's weddings going on downstairs and she's upstairs tidying up and sorting out and everything. You know, she inspired that play, and I've said it so many times that actually she started saying, well, what you should be writing about now, Kay, and what you should be writing... I think she thought that she had to tell me what the next thing was, you see. And I'd be kind of up to here with all the things I got to write, you know. You were divorced.
I'd been divorced, yeah.
Were you surprised to be married at 16?
That's what you did then. If you were pregnant, you got married. So it was a solution, a short-term solution, as I thought, to my situation, which was, I mean, I was a bit, when I think about it, I must have been quite naive, really, because, you know, we just took no precautions at all. It was inevitable I would get pregnant, really. And then Anthony wanted to marry me, so we went off and got married 3 weeks later. It had to be quick because I was already about, you know, sort of 4.5 months pregnant, so. I can see how that's pulled there, and you can see that actually I was pregnant.
There was an option given to me, which was the baby could be brought up by somebody else in the family as their own. But I chose to be my daughter's mother.
Was it after the birth of your second child that you got more and more interested in education again, in educating yourself, in getting O-levels and then A-levels?
Yes, it was. I mean, I wanted to take Gaynor to a play school, and there wasn't one available for her to go to. So I thought, oh, well, I'll start one. Somebody came along and said, oh, you need qualifications to do that. So decided, went off to college and did this diploma. And so I started going to the library and finding out where there were O-levels or A-levels or anything. And I became, I suppose, obsessive about it, about knowledge. And so I started collecting sort of O-levels and A-levels. I suddenly realised I got quite a lot of them, really. And then somebody came up to me and said, oh, there's somewhere called Bretton Hall College that I think you should think about getting the prospectus for, because it's a drama college and it's in the north of England, and you can do a degree in drama.
What inspired you to set up your own company after? Was it after?
Yeah, I loved acting and I loved writing. And so I was confused. And another thing was I loved being here in Yorkshire. So I formed a company with another couple of graduates. And we used to do plays. And we'd just do them anywhere. Pubs, clubs, you know, psychiatric units.
And so do you think that fed into your later work in the soap operas?
It's exactly the same, writing for a soap, really. You know, you've got these actors, they're contracted to do so many episodes. This is your storyline. There's a commercial break.
If you're in a long-running soap, you get to know the writers and you get to know your favourites, the ones that sort of trigger something. And there were some great writers on Brookside in those early days. And then suddenly a Kay script came on and she joined the honorary few. She had an understanding, and you suddenly think, oh, God, yes, that's exactly what I'd say in this position. That's what I feel. And therefore, the words became a truth for you, so it became very easy to learn because it came from the heart, knew exactly where her heart was. Does that make sense? And that there was a sort of connection for me and my character and her writing. She just knew exactly what to give me. I found her rather inspirational, her writing.
Were you surprised to be asked to adapt Jane Eyre?
Yeah, I was absolutely floored. Screaming out to Charlotte, help me. What have I taken on? Be with me. You bet, yeah.
Did you find it hard?
Very hard. I was truly daunted by her, and I thought that I had to sift through the text, honestly, and find her words and somehow replace them. That's what I thought adapting was. Acting fuels my writing, and writing fuels my acting. It'd be lovely if in a real world I could do both together. Well, I suppose Jane Eyre and Tracy and Carol and Anita and Band of Gold. They're all strong Yorkshire women, and they're all survivors. The character of Carol was inspired by my contact, by this particular contact. She was very sort of similar in a way. But I mean, you know, it wasn't her story, but I kind of embellished it and took some things down, to be honest with you.
Took things down in other...
Well...
Subdued things,
Yeah, background things that I thought weren't necessarily... To make my contact feel more kind of comfortable with the fact, because she'd made herself very...
There was a row about the casting of an Asian as the pimp in this, wasn't there? Yeah.
Des the pimp.
Yeah.
Could have been black, Asian, white, he could have been anything, as could any of the prostitutes. In Bradford, which is where it was set, it's quite a few Asian pimps there, and that is the reality of the situation.
The Asian community got very upset, as I understand it, didn't they? in
They did,
Bradford?
they did. There was already a tense situation in Bradford, to be honest with you, because, you know, prostitution side by side with you know, some of the Muslim fundamentalists is, you know, was a breed for kind of, you know, potential disharmony.
Who did the Asian community turn on, as it were? Did they turn on the pimps or the prostitutes or both?
Well, they turned on the prostitutes. I mean, we were the wrong people to turn on, really. And they moved them off the lane down into an industrial area where it was unsafe for the women to work.
What we're going to do is just stand beside them. Hopefully the punters, if the girls were not the punters, will get the message.
To be honest with you, it wasn't even the fundamentalists. When it all turned out, it was a lot of young Asian lads who had no job prospects. They, you know, there's nothing there for them particularly. It's interesting because when I look at Band of Gold and I go, oops, they're not a particularly nice bunch of men in there, that's because there wasn't very many nice stories coming back. You see what I mean? There wasn't, you know, nobody was saying, well, my husband was wonderful about it when I went, you know, when he found out I'd been into prostitution, or my dad was great, he was a fantastic role model. So my prime objective was to show that prostitutes were women first, mothers sometimes, more often than not, sisters, daughters, and down the line somewhere they were a prostitute or they were working women that had to sell themselves.
Well, I think when I look at the weight of the work she's done, and there's a sort of similarity going through it, which is warmth and a connection with an audience, an understanding of an audience, and she does it with humour. She takes on great issues, but she always manages to speak to the audience in a way that isn't lecturing or so you can do a program about understanding prostitution, if you like, Band of Gold, and she goes into the heart of that problem and that those women with such with a joy that's sort of an comprehension, but you don't feel as if you're not being dictated to, you're being entertained at the same time, and that's a gift, I think, that you can deal with those issues, abandonment and prostitution and just everyday life and some of it's the stresses and awfulness of ordinary life, and she can do it and she can speak it, and because of warmth, empathy. You have to have empathy for your audience, and she's got that in bucket loads.
When I'm writing something like Band of Gold, sometimes I don't particularly like the person that I am. I can get very edgy because I'm going on an emotional roller coaster. And by the time I've finished, I've got a rash on my hand and a flicker in my eye and I'm basically a wreck.
Shall I tell you a story about
It's
Nigel
great being a grandmother
and the
now.
Pussycat?
I get to tell Grace all the same stories that my mum used to tell me.
Nigel and the Pussycat. She wants to go on a journey. Where do you think they're going to go, Grace? They went to the land of Dickory-Doo. Grace, and do you know what's in the land of Dickory-Doo?